Christian Horner is gone, but only on paper. His dismissal from Red Bull in July was an earthquake for Formula One that still echoes today. A team principal who for 2 decades was the face of an era was removed from the center of power within days. And yet, those who know the sport know. People like Horner don't disappear. They pause, they observe, and they plan their next move. When Red Bull fired Horner, it initially seemed a strategic necessity. The pressure had become too great. The RB21, once a symbol of technical superiority, had lost its aura. After years of dominance, the team suddenly struggled with damage control while McLaren seized the constructors' title. Max Verstappen, the 4-time world champion, couldn't close the gap alone. The Red Bull machine, which Horner had led with an iron fist for 20 years, began to stutter. Politically, sportingly, and humanly. Officially, the reason was that it was time for new structures. Unofficially, it was the result of a series of tensions that had long escalated behind the scenes. Power struggles between Horner and Helmut Marko, mistrust in handling Ford as the new engine partner, and not least the rift in the relationship with Jos Verstappen. The image of the untouchable architect began to crumble. And yet the question remains, can Formula One exist without Christian Horner? Or more precisely, does it even want to? Because Horner was never just a team principal. He was a politician in a sport that lives on power games. He understood the business of headlines, the theater of cameras, and the art of disarming opponents in a single sentence. He didn't just build Red Bull into a world champion team, he turned it into a brand, a myth. 14 world championship titles, countless victories, and the image of the uncomfortable genius. Cool, provocative, and always 2 steps ahead. His departure was expensive. According to rumors, the contract termination cost Red Bull several dozen million dollars. But money was never the issue. The real price is the loss of structure. Since his departure, the team resembles a body without a head. Laurent Mekies and the engineering leadership struggle to create order, while Ford increases pressure to keep the engine project for 2026 on track. In this chaos grows the longing for someone who can concentrate power again. And that's exactly where Horner's advantage lies. Mercedes boss Toto Wolff, never a man for speculation, recently put it plainly, when someone like him disappears, you know he'll come back. The question is only when and where. Wolff is right. Horner is not a retirement type. He's too ambitious, too strategic, too dependent on the stage. His gardening leave, that polite formula for a forced pause, expires in spring 2026, and already now it seems clear he will reappear. The only open question is what color the next team will be painted. The rumor mill is churning. Aston Martin is said to have already put out feelers. Externally, team principal Andy Cowell denies any connection. But in Formula One, a denial rarely means there's nothing to it. Internally, the team desperately seeks a new leadership figure who can transform Lawrence Stroll's millions into sporting success. A man with Horner's track record and his network would be the ideal candidate. Haas has also been linked with him, but that's considered unlikely. Horner thinks bigger. His vision was never to survive. It was to rule. And should Aston Martin actually take the step of giving him control, more than just a team change could emerge. It could be the birth of a new Red Bull. But the way back is no sure thing. The shadows of his past accompany him. The accusations of inappropriate behavior, from which he was ultimately acquitted, have damaged his reputation. Not in the files, but in minds. In a sport increasingly characterized by PR-driven correctness, the question remains, can someone who was seen as a symbol of control and manipulation regain a foothold in a new era? If so, only because the system itself demands it. Because Formula One is not a moral project. It's a power game. And Horner is one of its best players. His resignation may be official, but his influence, it never disappeared. Engineers, sponsors, and former employees still have direct lines to him. His name still appears in conversations about 2026, often whispered, never denied. He is the phantom of the paddock, invisible but palpable. One thing is certain, Christian Horner's story is not over. It's just paused, and when he returns, he won't do it quietly. Because in Formula One, an iron rule applies. Whoever once had the throne doesn't want to share it. If Christian Horner actually returns, it won't be as a simple team principal. He's not coming back to take over a project. He's coming to build an empire. That's exactly what makes the rumors about Aston Martin so dangerous and so fascinating. Riccardo Patrese, a close confidant of Horner, recently put it bluntly: it would be like when Schumacher left Benetton and built Ferrari, a comparison that wasn't chosen by chance. In the 1990s, Michael Schumacher brought Ross Brawn, Rory Byrne, and half a team with him to Maranello and made it a dynasty. Patrese suggests that Horner and Verstappen could do exactly the same thing, this time in green instead of red. A new Red Bull, born in Silverstone, financed by Lawrence Stroll's billions. The scenario is not absurd. It's highly realistic. Aston Martin has the capital, the infrastructure, and the ego to attempt an assault on the top. What's missing is a leadership figure with the necessary coldness and experience to transform chaos into control. Andy Cowell, the current team principal, has technical excellence but no political punch. Horner, on the other hand, is the opposite. A strategist with killer instinct who doesn't share power but structures it. But the key to this possible power shift is named Max Verstappen. 4 titles, a global icon, and a driver whose loyalty to Red Bull shows increasing cracks. Since Horner's departure, the relationship between Verstappen and the team has noticeably cooled. Ford pushes with its own priorities. Helmut Marko is losing influence, and the Red Bull 2026 project seems less like an evolution than a gamble. Should the engine fail, Verstappen faces a dilemma: stay or flee. And that's exactly where Horner could come back into play. Between the two exists a bond that goes beyond the usual team principal-driver dynamic. Horner was the man who brought Verstappen into the team against all resistance, who protected him, shaped him, and ultimately made him what he is today, an uncompromising winner. If Verstappen leaves Red Bull, it won't be for money, but for trust. And Horner is the only one who can give him that. The notion of a new Red Bull at Aston Martin is therefore more than a theory. It's a warning to the competition. A union of Horner's leadership style, Verstappen's talent, and Stroll's resources would be an alliance that could reorder Formula One's entire power block. Mercedes would have to react, McLaren would lose its peace, and Red Bull itself would plunge into an existential crisis. Because what remains of Red Bull without Horner and Verstappen? An engine project with Ford, a technical foundation heading toward Adrian Newey's departure, and management increasingly consumed by internal factions. The energy drink dynasty, as it's been called in the press, stands on shaky legs. Horner knows that, and he also knows that his absence there causes more damage than his presence ever could. Toto Wolff suggested in Singapore that Formula One is moving toward a new political phase. By that, he means not just the new regulations from 2026, but the game behind the scenes: contracts, alliances, media wars. Horner was always one of the best players in the system, and if he returns, he'll define the rules anew. But a comeback at Aston Martin is no sure thing. There are obstacles: legal, strategic, and personal. Red Bull built into the contract termination a restrictive clause that binds Horner from public functions until mid-2026. But as history shows, such restrictions are flexible. Formula One is notorious for the fact that big names return faster than their contracts allow. Additionally, the question arises whether Lawrence Stroll would really be willing to let a man like Horner truly take control. Stroll is not an investor who stays in the background. He's a patriarch, authoritarian, ambitious, unpredictable. 2 alpha males under one roof can't coexist forever. And that's exactly the kind of fuel Formula One loves: Horner versus Stroll, power versus money, control versus vision. But Horner plays the long game. He knows that 2026 is a reset. The cards are being reshuffled. Whoever has the right engine, the right heads, and the right drivers can dominate in this new era. And perhaps he already has a plan to achieve exactly that. The question of whether he'll return is no longer a question of if. It's a question of when. And perhaps also of how much damage he wants to cause first. Because Horner was never someone who disappears quietly. When he returns, it will be spectacular. He won't seek a second chance. He'll construct it. And should Max Verstappen actually stand by his side, then Formula One in 2026 could witness what many thought impossible: the fall of the old Red Bulls and the birth of a new one. An empire never ends peacefully, it just relocates,